If you don't come home for your brother's engagement party, never call me mom again. Those were the last words my mother said before hanging up on me, SS. I used to be the invisible child, the one cast aside because I wasn't the pride of the family like my brother. They still think I'm the same failure of a sibling, but they're wrong. I'm coming back. This time not to celebrate, but to see if they've changed after more than 10 years of my absence. Follow my story and feel free to share your thoughts or advice. If someone asked me about my family, I'd probably smile and say, "We used to be a family. Now we've all gone our separate ways. That's all." Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm 28, a software engineer, and the co-founder of a small fintech company based in Seattle. Life's been pretty steady for me lately. A modest apartment, a job that keeps me on my toes, and quiet evenings I've learned to genuinely appreciate. I don't have many close friends and haven't kept in touch with my family. It's been 10 years since I walked away from the place I once called home. In all that time, none of them ever reached out, not once. That changed 6 months ago when my mom suddenly called. Her voice was urgent as she told me about my brother's engagement party and said I had to attend. Just one sentence, but I knew then this wouldn't be a typical family gathering. And I was right. It was a Friday afternoon. I had just wrapped up a virtual meeting with a partner in Singapore, and before I could even get up from my chair, the phone on my desk started ringing. An unknown number. I frowned, ready to let it go to voicemail, but for some reason I picked up. The voice on the other end made me freeze for a second. It was my mother. "It's me," she said quickly, like she was afraid I'd hang up before she could get to the point. "I had to use a new number. You probably blocked my old one." I didn't say anything. She was right. I had blocked it after a few shallow attempts at small talk years ago. "How have you been? Seattle must be pretty cold this time of year," she said, then jumped straight to the real reason for her call. "Your brother's getting engaged. It's in 2 weeks. The whole family is planning a big party. Everyone's coming. You have to be there." I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm swamped. We're in the final stretch of a big project at work. It'll be hard to make time." The silence on the other end felt heavy. Then she spoke again, her tone sharper this time, cold and final. "If you don't come home for your brother's engagement party, never call me mom again." And just like that, she hung up, leaving me no chance to say another word. I gripped my phone tightly. After 10 years of silence, she chose to tell me that. A demand. A warning. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just an invitation. It was an ultimatum. Come home, or be erased from whatever family I used to belong to. Right after that call, I hung up, stood up, and walked out of the office. The Seattle sky that afternoon was overcast, gray and heavy, just like my mood. Weighed down and full of doubt, I drove back to the only place I truly call home. Not the house I grew up in, but the one I built with my own 2 hands. I bought this place 4 years ago with the first money I ever earned from coding. No help, no encouragement, no one backing me, just me. I stepped into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and made a strong cup of black coffee. I needed to be clear-headed, very clear-headed, because deep down, I knew I was about to walk into a game set in motion by my family long ago. 10 years sounds like a long time, but the past still plays out in my mind like it was yesterday. I remember exactly what it felt like to be left behind, to be a shadow in my own home. When I was little, I believed my parents would finally see me someday if I tried hard enough. But the older I got, the clearer it became, painfully clear. In my family, I was just a shadow. Brandon, my older brother, was the light. He's 2 years older than me, and somehow everything he did was considered amazing. He'd scribble a few lines on a piece of paper, and Mom would laminate it and hang it on the wall like a masterpiece. I won second place in a district math competition. She just gave me a half smile and said, "That's nice, but don't tell your brother, okay? He might feel bad." I still remember when I was 11 and won second place in a handwriting contest. I rushed home, proud and excited, only to find the whole family throwing a barbecue party in the backyard because Brandon had made the starting lineup for a casual soccer game. No one asked me how school went that day. On my 13th birthday, I only wanted a bike, so I wouldn't have to walk to school anymore. I'd been walking 3 years straight every morning. But Brandon had lost his baseball bat, so my dad used all the savings to buy him a new one. Me? I got a nice backpack, except it was made for a 5th grader. Everything I had was whatever was left after Brandon got his share. That's when I learned, if you want peace in this house, you'd better learn how to erase yourself. When I was 18, I received a full-ride scholarship to MIT, the school I'd dreamed of since middle school. I still remember the moment I opened that acceptance letter, my hands shaking with emotion. I brought it home, heart full of hope, thinking maybe this time they'd be proud of me the way they'd always been proud of him. But after reading it, my mom just paused for a moment and softly said, "MIT is so far away, sweetheart. If you go, your brother's going to feel sad." I froze. A few days later, my parents called me into the living room. My dad looked serious as he spoke. "Brandon didn't get into his dream school. He's down. Don't go too far, okay? Just pick a school nearby so you two can stay close." I bit my lip and forced myself to ask, "But I got a full scholarship. This is MIT. I've been working toward this for years." My mom placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice gentle, almost soothing. "You're smart. We know that. But don't make your brother feel left behind. He's sensitive. If you leave, he'll feel like a failure. It'll throw off the balance in the family." I nodded on the outside, but inside, I knew I wasn't going to accept that. I quietly went ahead with the paperwork. I packed my bags and even forged an acceptance letter from a local college to keep them off my trail. On the day they thought I was enrolling down the street, I boarded a flight to Boston instead, carrying only one thing with me: the determination that if they were willing to bury my dream to protect Brandon's pride, then I'd have to rewrite my life on my own terms. I arrived at MIT on a crisp fall morning. The dorm was old but warm, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's shadow. I called it my first taste of freedom, hard-earned, but worth it. But just one day later, my phone rang. It was my mom. Before I could say a word, her voice came crashing through, sharp as a blade, shaking with fury. "So you think you're something special now, Natalie, running off to MIT without saying a word? You did this to humiliate your brother, didn't you? Do you have any idea how upset he is?" I stayed silent, trying to keep calm. But she wasn't finished. "This family doesn't need a selfish child like you. Don't expect a single penny from me. Not 1 cent, you hear me?" She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my chest heavy as stone. Right then and there, I opened my contacts and blocked every number from my family. My mom, my dad, Brandon. No rage, no tears. Just the quiet, steady decision to cut ties with people who had only ever seen me as a shadow meant to make my brother shine brighter. My 4 years at MIT were the toughest I'd ever lived, but also the most defining. There was no financial support, no safety net, no one to lean on except myself. By day, I buried myself in lectures, labs, and problem sets that made others quit halfway. By night, I worked at the library and sometimes bussed tables at a campus diner. There were months when I survived on just $150 for food. I learned to stretch every dollar to make a cup of coffee last 2 sittings. But I never complained, because I knew true freedom is never free. I got through every exam with tears and caffeine, with the quiet ache of loneliness that settled in during long, snowy nights when my roommate went home for the holidays. I stayed behind, typing up final papers to the sound of the wind howling outside my window. And then the day finally came. The day I stood on the graduation stage holding my degree with honors. My name was announced in MIT's Grand Hall. No one from my family was there. No phone call, no hug, nothing. Most of my classmates had someone cheering them on. Me? I stood alone in my cap and gown in the middle of that vast campus courtyard. But I didn't feel alone. I held my head high, gripping that diploma like it carried every ounce of those hard years. I was proud of myself, but I also knew pride wasn't a reason to stop moving forward. I didn't come this far to prove I could make it to my family. I did it to prove that I deserved a life that was mine, one I could choose. 10 years since I walked out of that house, everything has changed, at least for me. Today, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a tech company specializing in AI for the finance sector, valued at over $50 million. My annual income is in the 7 figures. Life is stable and quiet. I live in a warm, comfortable home in Seattle, not extravagant, but every inch of it built by my own hands. I've kept the same phone number, not out of nostalgia, but because it serves as a soft boundary, a faded wall that holds just enough distance between me and my family. I've never shared all my success online, the awards, certifications, and features in finance publications, because deep down I know, no matter what I achieve, in their eyes, Brandon will always be the only one worth being proud of. But this time, after that call from my mother, I decided to return, not to change them, not to reclaim a love that's long dried up. I'm going back to play the role of the invisible sister one last time. And when the moment is right, I'll let them see for themselves that they spent 10 years turning their backs on a daughter they never truly knew. 2 weeks later, I landed at JFK after just an hour-long flight. New York greeted me with a gray sky and the sharp chill of early fall. I wheeled my suitcase out and caught a taxi to the old house I'd left 10 years ago without looking back. When the car pulled up to the gate, no one came out to greet me. No text, no call asking, "Are you here yet?" The house looked the same, but it no longer felt like home. I walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door. Her eyes paused for a split second when she saw me, then quickly settled into a calm, unreadable expression. No welcome home, no hug, just a command, sharp and cold. "So you finally showed up. There's still a lot to do. Come in and help." Before I could even process her words, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my father. "No good to see you, or it's been long." He handed me a paper covered in messy handwriting and said, in his usual commanding tone, "Here's the list of tasks to finish before the party. Time's tight." I took the paper and nodded. No complaint. I was ready for this. Just then, Brandon walked down the stairs. Pressed shirt, hair slicked with gel, eyes scanning past me like I was a stranger. His voice was calm but biting. "Let's hope you don't screw things up this time." I gave a faint smile and replied with a simple nod. That afternoon, a few relatives arrived to help with the decorations. Some gave me polite nods. Some looked at me and asked casually, "Hey, Natalie, right? You look different." Then, just as quickly, the conversation shifted, eager voices lighting up as they talked about Brandon. "Brandon's doing great now. Senior manager at that real estate firm, pulling in close to $120,000 a year." An aunt I barely knew chimed in. "And his fiancée. Brilliant independent investor, sharp as a tack. Natalie, you should try to learn something from your brother." I just smiled. No one asked me what I'd been doing, and honestly, no one wanted to know. I picked up a bouquet for the decorations and quietly walked back inside. The whole family gathered for a cozy dinner before the engagement party that evening. The table was beautifully set, the soft yellow lighting casting a warm glow across the room, making it look more inviting than it felt. Eliza, Brandon's fiancée, arrived right on time. She wore a modest yet elegant dress, striking that perfect balance between class and confidence. She was beautiful, self-assured, with a half smile that drifted from person to person like a practiced dance. Brandon stood up beaming and pulled out her chair like he was presenting a prize jewel. "Natalie, this is Eliza, my future wife," he said proudly. "She's an independent investor, specializing in personal and business financial consulting." Eliza tilted her head politely in my direction, her eyes scanning me with subtle curiosity before speaking. "It's good we finally meet. Brandon's told me a lot about his little sister." I gave a faint smile and a quick nod. "Is that so? Funny. I hadn't heard anything about you." The air tightened for a second, but only for a second before the dinner resumed as if nothing happened. Halfway through the meal, Eliza started talking about her work. Her voice was light and breezy. "The market's been unpredictable lately, but there's still solid profit with the right approach to cash flow. I'm managing a private fund, invitation only, for those with long-term vision." She went on and on about profit optimization strategies, internal networks, and exclusive capital sourcing. The longer she talked, the more familiar it all sounded. Too familiar. The language she used wasn't that of a seasoned investor. It was the kind of language meant to sound impressive, decorative jargon, to gloss over the lack of real substance. I glanced at Brandon. He sat there wide-eyed, hanging on to every word like she was unveiling the universe's secrets. And then it hit me. About a year ago, my close friend Nathan, a fintech startup co-founder, got scammed by a so-called investment advisor he'd met at a conference. She'd posed as a financial consultant, pitched a joint venture, and vanished after pocketing a $50,000 pilot investment. When Nathan told me about it, I vaguely remembered him saying her name was something like Ella or Elaine, but he'd sent me a photo. That face. No matter the name or hairstyle, it was burned into my memory. I kept my expression neutral, pretending to be just another polite guest. I waited until she wrapped up her slick pitch about private funds and exclusive opportunities. Then I smiled casually. "Do you use LinkedIn or Twitter? I'm in finance too. Maybe we've got some mutual connections." She gave me her handle. I pulled out my phone, typed it in, and quickly took a screenshot of her profile picture. I sent it straight to Nathan with just one question. Is this her? Less than a minute later, a reply lit up my screen. 100%. That's the one who scammed me. My grip tightened around the phone. The dinner carried on. Cheerful, clueless, but inside me something had shifted. The battle had begun. After Eliza's flawless performance, full of elegant buzzwords about the market, private funds, and exclusive opportunities for those with vision, the dinner table lit up. Relatives nodded in approval, clearly impressed. An uncle on my mother's side even blurted out, "This girl's sharp. She knows what she's talking about. Brandon picked a winner." And then my mother, perhaps wanting to add more fuel to her pride, spoke up, her voice laced with boastfulness. "Eliza is incredibly trustworthy. The whole family believes in her. We even mortgaged the house, got $400,000 to invest in her plan." A small gasp went around the table, but she wasn't done. "Brandon's invested all his savings too, almost $200,000. But it's no big deal. We'll make it back in 6 months, double even." All eyes turned to Eliza. She smiled confidently, folding her hands like she'd just delivered a sacred truth. "That's right. 6 months is the turnaround. Minimum 200% return. I've run this model multiple times. I have a risk control team in place. Everyone can relax." That's when I felt the heat rise in my face. $400,000 from a house mortgage, $200,000 in life savings, all handed to someone I knew, without a doubt, was a con artist. I couldn't sit back and let them walk off a cliff. I slowly set my glass down, locked eyes with her, and said her name, the name she once used to scam my friend. Elaine Carter. The table froze. Eliza turned to me, eyes slightly wide, just for a moment. A flicker of panic flashed before she hit it. I repeated it, louder, unwavering. "You used that name, and you disappeared with $50,000 from a fintech startup in Boston. Am I wrong?" Silence fell like a curtain. The admiration in everyone's eyes vanished, replaced by confusion and suspicion. No one was eating now. Eliza's hands, once so steady, slowly dropped to her lap. She froze for a beat, then composed herself and offered a soft smile. "Natalie, I think you've got the wrong person. I've never used that name. You're probably confusing me with someone who looks like me." I didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye and continued. "No, I'm not confused. I also know you faked a marriage in Boston to steal assets. I can call the police now, if you'd prefer to handle this legally." The room went still. Eliza's face went pale, her smile vanishing like it had never been there. I tilted my head slightly, my voice calm, like I was reading the terms and conditions of a contract. "If you're innocent, you've got nothing to worry about. You could hire a lawyer, sue me for defamation. I'd be more than happy to meet you in court." Brandon shot up from his seat, his palm slamming against the table, his face flushed red with rage. "You're just trying to ruin this. Jealous no one cares about you anymore, right? You're sick." My father nearly shouted, "That's enough! Are you out of your mind, Natalie? You're humiliating this entire family." And my mother, now completely unhinged, stood up and pointed straight at me, her voice trembling with fury. "I have no daughter like you. Get out of this house right now and don't ever come back." I stood still for a few seconds, sweeping my eyes slowly around the room at the faces I once called family. All of them turned away. I nodded, no anger in my face, only something quieter. "All right, but remember this. I warned you. If you get scammed, don't come running to me. I'm not responsible for other people's stupidity." And with that, I turned and began walking toward the door. Before I could reach the door, a voice rang out from behind, sarcastic, sharp, bitter. "She's just jealous. If you were doing so well, you wouldn't need to stand here trying to prove it." I stopped and turned. It was Uncle Tom, my dad's cousin. Always the loudest when it came to judgment, never the smartest. I didn't say a word. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a matte black business card embossed in silver, and gently placed it on the table, right in front of him, where everyone could see it. "You can look it up yourselves," I said calmly. "Company names at the top, Google it, check the About Us section, founder and CEO. Or better yet, search my name in Forbes 30 Under 30 last year." I didn't wait for their reactions. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. I opened the door and walked out, leaving behind a house that was no longer home, with the softest, most liberating smile. That night, with no flights available, I booked a 4-star hotel room in the heart of Manhattan to stay over. The room was quiet, tastefully elegant. Nothing flashy. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I could, because I deserved it. I sat alone by the window, looking down at the glowing streetlights and the endless stream of people moving through the city, even this late. I didn't feel angry anymore, just empty, a kind of quiet ache that didn't have a name. Even after everything, being kicked out, humiliated, I still felt a twinge of sadness. There was still a part of me buried deep inside that used to be a girl who just wanted a typical family, who once dreamed of sitting at a dinner table without feeling like an outsider. Lost in thought, I was pulled back by the sudden ringing of my phone. It was my mother. I didn't pick up. Then Brandon called. I let it ring. And then the messages started rolling in. The first was from my mother. Her tone was completely different now. Soft, emotional. She said she hadn't meant what she said, that she'd just gotten too worked up. She'd always loved me, but everyone shows love in different ways. That family is still family, and I would always have a place in that house. A few minutes later, Brandon messaged. He admitted maybe I was right about Eliza, that things should probably be looked into. But then his tone shifted, suddenly warmer, almost proud. He told me I was impressive, and that he was genuinely proud to have a sister like me. He said his friends talked about my business card like it was a golden ticket. Then another message from my mom, reminding me the engagement ceremony was in the morning. She said I should come, at least to keep the peace, that my presence would make everyone happy, that I was successful now, so there was no need to hold on to grudges. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not a single message said, "We were wrong." Not one apology for the insults, for throwing me out like I was nothing. Just sweetened words, carefully chosen, now that they realized I was worth something. I turned off the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. Then I pulled the blanket over me and went to sleep, light, unburdened. Soft sunlight slipped through the sheer curtains the following day, but I didn't bother pulling them back. I woke later than usual, made myself a slow cup of coffee, and sat by the window on the 15th floor, watching the city come alive below. Not once did the thought of attending the engagement ceremony cross my mind. Despite their messages, the pleading, the attempts at reconciliation, I knew it wasn't about love, it was about value. They only reached out because my name now carried weight. I put on a crisp shirt, packed my bag unhurriedly, and checked the flight confirmation I'd booked the night before. Right at 10:20 a.m., the messages started pouring in again. But this time, they weren't sweet anymore. No more pretending. No more pride. Just panic. The first was from my mother, her tone frantic. "Natalie, Eliza's gone. So is the money. Your brother's having a breakdown. Your father's sick. Please come home. Help me. Help the family." I set the phone down and closed my eyes for a few seconds. It was exactly as I warned. Exactly what I saw coming. But they didn't want to believe me. I picked up the phone again and typed a single message. "I've booked a flight. I leave for Boston at 2 p.m. No more, no comfort, no promises of return." Because I knew what they needed now wasn't me. They needed a lifeline, but I wasn't that lifeline anymore. I was just the one who warned them, and now I walked away, just like I did 10 years ago. A week later, life had settled back into its usual rhythm. I was in my office on the 18th floor of the Techor building, the headquarters of the company I co-founded. Every corner, every desk in that space carried the weight of sleepless nights and years spent building something from absolutely nothing. The screen in front of me displayed a cascade of numbers and live market analysis models, data updating in real time. I was in an internal strategy meeting when the desk phone rang. It was the front desk downstairs. The receptionist's voice was soft but uncertain. "Miss Natalie, there are 3 people in the lobby. They say they're your parents and your brother. They'd like to see you." I froze for a moment. I had expected this. When Eliza vanished with the money, when the truth hit them, when they finally realized I wasn't trying to sabotage anyone but warn them, it was only a matter of time before they came looking. I could have said no. I could have asked the receptionist to send them away. But I knew better. They wouldn't stop. If not today, then tomorrow. If not here, then at my apartment or somewhere else. I let out a quiet sigh, set my pen down on the desk, and replied, "Send them up. Conference room, 18th floor. Let them wait 5 minutes." I stood up, walked into the restroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. Straightened my blouse, smoothed the cuffs of my suit. Not for them, but because I wanted them to clearly see who I had become. The woman they once cast aside, now standing in a place they never imagined I could reach. When I walked into the private conference room, they were already there. My father sat at the head of the table, wearing that familiar, stern expression. But his eyes, there was something different in them. My mother stood up first, managing a forced smile. Her hands trembled slightly, like she was about to step forward. Brandon stood by the window, hands in his pockets. He turned his head when I entered. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Didn't say a word, just nodded, gesturing for them to go ahead. My mother glanced around the room, her eyes flicking across the sleek interior, a hint of awe behind her curiosity. "Your office. It's impressive," she said. "I've never been in a company this elegant before." My father cleared his throat, nodded slowly while eyeing the integrated wall displays, then turned to me. "I must admit, you've done more than I ever expected. This isn't something just anyone can build." Brandon gave a half smirk, half laugh. "You're a CEO, huh? At first I thought all that stuff online was maybe exaggerated." I said nothing, just sat there, fingers loosely intertwined on the table before me, calmly watching them as if I were listening to a status report. They kept going. My mother slowly sat down, her eyes softer now, more pleading than proud. "You know, no matter what I said back then, deep down, I always believed you'd make it. I'm proud of you, Natalie. Truly." My father followed, his voice low, trying to sound sincere. "Maybe we were a little too rigid, but seeing you now, how far you've come, I am proud." I still didn't speak. No nods, no reassurances, just a faint smile. A smile with no joy, no forgiveness, just peace. Because for the first time in my life, I could sit there and listen without needing to prove anything. A few minutes passed, after they'd finished unloading their carefully polished compliments. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, and calmly cut in. "All right, let's get to the point." All three of them froze. The air in the room shifted, like something fragile had finally cracked. My father was the first to speak, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier pride. "The house, it's about to be repossessed by the bank. Everything we mortgaged to invest with Eliza, it's all gone." Brandon followed, no longer trying to sound upbeat. "My $200,000 wiped out. I've got nothing left. I need to start over." My mother placed her hand gently on the table, lifting her eyes to meet mine. "Our family needs you, Natalie. You're the most successful one. You could buy back the house, make sure your father and I don't end up on the street, and maybe help Brandon out, just enough for him to get back on his feet." I raised an eyebrow, my tone steady. "How do you want me to help?" My father stared straight at me, not even blinking. "Buy back the house. Support us with $2,000 a month. Considerate repayment for raising you. And as for Brandon, give him $300,000 to start fresh. Or, if it makes more sense, give him a small share in your company." The moment those words left his mouth, I laughed. Not politely, not with courtesy. I laughed loud, raw, unfiltered, the kind of laugh that had been buried deep in my chest for years, maybe decades. The kind of laugh that comes when irony burns too hot to stay silent. Then I said nothing. Instead, I slowly pulled my phone from my suit pocket, eyes still locked on theirs. I tapped a familiar name and, before the second ring, I spoke into the receiver. "Bring him in." The door to the conference room opened almost immediately. A tall man in a black suit stepped in, carrying a leather folder. His face was blank, his eyes sharp. "Mr. Harris," I said evenly, "my legal counsel." He scanned the room, expression unreadable, then turned to me and gave a slight nod, waiting. I turned back to my family. Their faces had already begun to change, confusion, settling into something closer to dread. "When the front desk told me you were here," I said, my voice flat and cold, "I called my lawyer. I had a feeling this visit wasn't about apologies. And I was right. You didn't come here to make peace. You came for money." I placed both hands on the table, leaning forward slightly. My smile was gone. My eyes were hard. And for the first time, they were the ones sitting in silence. They were the ones waiting to be judged. Mr. Harris stepped forward to stand beside me, his folder still closed because he didn't need to open it. His presence alone said everything. He glanced at the three sitting across from us and spoke with a voice calm and crisp, precisely the kind of tone used by someone accustomed to shutting down people who come with the wrong intentions. "First, let me state clearly, my client, Miss Natalie Adams, holds no legal obligation toward the individuals present." He paused. There was a sharp silence. His gaze cut across them like a blade. Any further attempts to apply pressure, request financial support, or make insinuations under the pretense of family from this moment forward will be considered harassment, and if it continues, we will not hesitate to file charges in court. The room thickened with tension. No one dared interrupt. Mr. Harris then gestured toward the corner of the room. This room is under active video and audio surveillance. If any false rumors or defamatory statements are spread following this meeting, especially those that could harm Miss Adams's reputation or the standing of her company, we will pursue legal action for libel and intentional reputational damage. The moment those final words landed, the faces across from me changed. They knew the game was over. My mother's face flushed red. She clenched her jaw and snapped. So now that you've made it, you think you're above everyone else? Did you forget who gave birth to you, you ungrateful brat? Brandon slammed his hand on the table. You get a little money and suddenly you turn your back on your blood? You think you're better than us? I tilted my head slightly, as if I just remembered something, then turned to Mr. Harris and asked, wholly composed, verbal abuse and character defamation caught on private security footage. Would that hold up in court? Mr. Harris didn't hesitate. He gave a single firm nod. More than enough. In a split second, their rage turned to confusion. My father's face went pale. My mother fell silent. And for the first time, Brandon looked down, speechless. None of them apologized. None of them expressed regret. But they stood up quickly and exited the room in a rush, slipping past Mr. Harris like he was a wall they were afraid to brush against. The door closed behind them with a quiet click. I didn't look back, because this time, I wasn't the one walking away in silence. I was the one who ended it. Some might say I was cold, that I was selfish, that I was cruel for turning my back on my own family in their time of desperation. Some might ask, why didn't you set conditions? Why not make them sign over the house before helping? Why not give them a chance to make things right? I understand. From the outside, it probably looks simple. I have money, they don't, and I chose not to help. But what most people don't see is this. In the 10 years I was fighting to survive, clawing my way up from nothing, not one of them asked if I was okay. Not one text, not one call, not a single word of encouragement. I built my entire life from zero, alone. And now, when I finally have something they need, they didn't come back for me. They came back for what I could give them. This wasn't revenge. This was a choice to no longer be involved. And for me, that is the greatest freedom I've ever earned. In the end, I learned something valuable. Family doesn't always mean love. Some relationships, if they cost you your dignity and peace of mind, are better left behind. You can forgive, but you're not obligated to carry the weight. You can be kind, Shamai, but you don't have to be a lifeline for those who once turned their backs on you. And before I close this chapter, I'll leave you with a question. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you for listening.